lot to learn from you about how to get a crowd quiet. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Welcome. I am Scott Weathers, as Kate said. I'm the Lamoille County Chair. And as you probably know, county Democratic committees are the lifeblood of the Vermont Democratic Party. And it's a pleasure. I'm just incredibly proud of Lamoille County for sending so many Democratic representatives to Montpelier. And in the few instances that we've lost, I know that the Republicans in our area know that we're hot on their tails.
Yeah.
So as we've done this work, I just want to thank the Vermont Democratic Party and say that it's truly an honor that VDP has brought all of you to Stowe, our mountain perch, to teach not just Lamoille County, but the entire state how to do democratic politics. So thank you so much for coming. And next, I just want to welcome some of the Lamoille County representatives who are here with us. We have Representative Dan Noyes. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here. We also have Kate Donnelly. And lastly, Dave Iacoboni. Dave is always the master of Hawaiian shirts. I'm taking a fashion lesson from him. I also really want to welcome here our esteemed Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray. Thank you, Molly Gray. Next, we have Secretary of State Jim Condos here. Speaker Joe Krowinski. Senate Pro Tem Becca Balint. Our majority leaders in the Senate and the House, Allison Clarkson. As well as Emily Wong. And I want to just thank all of the other legislators who came to be here with us tonight. Thank you so much. And before I introduce our featured speakers tonight, I just want to acknowledge all of our sponsors who made this possible. So thank you so much to the Necrason Group. To Speaker Joe Krowinski. To Secretary Jim Condos. Senator Pro Tem Becca Balint again. Nick Chudley Carter of Montpelier, a pro-democracy advocate. Senator Allison Clarkson. Dottie Deans and Lydia Spitzer, thank you. Clive Gray. Joan Lemus. Ryan Sheldon. And Peter Sterling, thank you so much. So across the country, voting rights are under attack. 16 states have enacted laws that make it harder to vote by mail, and 8 states have made it harder to vote in person by enacting voter ID laws, outlawing same-day registration, and even eliminating polling places altogether. But as you know, here in Vermont, it's a completely different story. And so while Republicans across the country continue to try to limit access to the ballot, Vermont Democrats fought for and passed a historic universal vote by mail measure that will mail a ballot to every Vermonter's house for the 2022 general election and beyond, all while ensuring that our elections are safe and secure. And so it's truly a pleasure for me to introduce the man who brought universal vote by mail to Vermont. I've even tonight, I've heard some people call him the man who saved democracy in Vermont. So please give a very warm welcome to the man, the myth, the legend,
I'm not sure I really need this thing. First, I want to thank everybody. It is awesome to have you all here. My esteemed colleagues, where's Becca? She's here. Becca and Bill are here. You know, we couldn't have done this without them. Sarah Copeland Hansis, the head of the committee. I'm going to basically start out by just talking about where we were a year or so ago and then where we are today. The thing that really makes me choke up a little bit sometimes is that we are a national leader in voting rights across this country. And I also have to quickly introduce my deputy, Chris Winters. He has been indispensable to our overall operations, our legislative agenda. He really is the guy that's on the ground over at the State House. I come in when we need to drop a hammer. But now I most importantly want to say thank you to all of you, because we couldn't do it without your support, without your support of candidates, the party, to really instill and make Vermont be a beacon of hope across this country. We're in a lot of dark days right now, nationally. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of voter suppression that's going on. Chris can tell you that I struggle when I go to my National Association meetings, butting heads with my Republican colleagues who see nothing wrong with it. But make no mistake, around the country, the GOP is leading an all-out assault on voting rights. They're using the big lie. They're trying to sow the fact that integrity in our elections is at risk. They're trying to spur, as we know, insurrection, and just as dangerously, and probably more dangerously, they're passing laws that should not be passed. Up and down the ballot, we could not lead the way without your continued support again. And it is important at this very juncture of the critical decisions that need to be made, not just here in Vermont, but across the country. I was telling Chris and some others this morning, I was supposed to be in DC today. I was supposed to be meeting with the Texas Democrats. One of the problems I had was getting a flight back to get here in time, but the other problem was that COVID has struck them down there. So they've got about 6 of their legislators that now have COVID and more on the way. Despite the many challenges that we posed to our elections in 2020, Vermont's 246 town clerks, we couldn't have done it without them. The state's election team, we have 5 people. We're the smallest election team in the country. And most importantly, all Vermonters rose to the occasion, voting in record-shattering numbers during a global pandemic. Our decision to mail a ballot to every active registered voter resulted in the greatest voter participation that we've ever seen in Vermont. We set records for both early voting and for overall turnout. I will note that there are many some of the Vermont Republicans worked hard last year, as Sarah can tell you, to prevent us from doing this. And luckily for us, we had the Democratic House and Senate leadership who stepped up to lead us to ensure that I had the emergency authority that was needed going into the throes of the pandemic. This is just prior to the time when the governor shut down the state. We came to the committees, the House and Senate Gov Ops committees, and said, hey, if this thing goes like we think it might, we're going to be in trouble come election season. So, you know, we had several meetings and knew what we had to do, and it was important that we did. Vermonters were able to vote safely, securely, without needing to decide between putting their health or their relatives' health, their community's health at risk, or putting, or deciding to vote in the throes of a pandemic. So they didn't have to make the choice. We made it for them. They just had to fill out the ballot and send it back. Our approach was a success. 75% of all ballots cast in both the primary and the general election, 75% were cast early or by mail. That allowed us to keep the numbers down at the polls, because we saw what was happening in Wisconsin and some of the other states where they had lines and people were catching COVID standing in line to vote. So, and it also helped our election workers. Linda Martin, where are you?
Whoa, she's right here.
After Election Day, our town clerks in Vermont have 48 hours to review, edit, and certify their election results and submit them to our office, where my team then takes over and has to aggregate 246 towns' data into a report that we then present to the canvass committee on 7 days after the election. We had certified our election 7 days after the election.
Bravo.
Not many states. On December 15th, the Electoral College met across the country. Vermont's 3 electors, in this case Democratic electors, met at the State House to certify and send the results to Congress to be opened and counted on January 6th. Kind of an important date.
We were the first.
Yes, we were. Unfortunately, we all know what happened after that. Leading up to January 6th, I can report to you, and Chris knows this well, that my office and I received threats of harm. We had several voicemails to our extensions. We had text messages on our cell phones. I was threatened with prison. Didn't scare me. But this last one was the one that bothered me the most. And I'll paraphrase it, but it's basically said, there is a reason why the Trump administration is bringing back firing squads, and you are next. That's what we had to deal with. Now I want you to think about my colleagues in Arizona, Michigan, Colorado. They're still under 24/7 security details. Still, to this day. We do post-election audits here in Vermont. We have been since 2006. We've never had a problem. We've never had a discrepancy. They work. They give us the confidence. It gave us so much confidence that the legislature a few years ago mandated that if a town of 1,000 voters or more had to have a tabulator to do that work for them, because it's reliable, it's secure, not attached to the internet in any way. Our audits follow the best practices of transparency, independence, security, statistical confidence. Not one of those 4 items is present in the Arizona fraud. Not one. Now I've focused on negative for a while. I don't want to speak too much about S15, which is what the legislature passed this year, because I think Becca and Jill are gonna talk about it, but I wanna say that we had a lot of partners in this. I'm not gonna name them all off because yeah, I would probably forget some, but the Nekrasen group was key in rounding them all up and getting them focused. What we've seen this year is 48 states at this point. 48 states have introduced over 400 bills, all to reduce access to the ballot and suppress the vote. You heard some of the statistics from Scott about what has transpired so far. Luckily, not all these bills are going to pass. But here, with Dems leading the way, legislators came together to pass S-15. And I couldn't be more proud of them. We worked closely with them. Sarah was a trooper on this one. Well, what 2020 really showed us was if we give the voters the tools they need to vote, they will vote. And the other thing that our office believes strongly, one of my mantras when I get on national TV, is that I firmly believe our democracy is stronger when we all participate. Simple. And when we put out the press release after the legislature passed S-15, we called it the most historic bill of voting ballot access in decades, and I firmly believe that. Now let me get back to the national landscape. The 2020 election was the most divisive election that I've ever experienced, but it was also the most secure, most scrutinized, if ever, in history, if ever. Chris Krebs, who was the head of CISA, which is a division of that handles cybersecurity for the Homeland Security, lost his job because he came out and said that it was the most heavily scrutinized and secure election in history. He lost his job. Bill Barr, who I don't care if he loses his job. Bill Barr came out and said there was no proof of any voter fraud across the country. Now, I'm not going to tell you that voter fraud doesn't happen. It does happen. But what happens is that the voter fraud that we see is a one here, one there. That's really what's happened. There's been many studies done. Loyola University, what's his name? Remember?
Chris.
It was done by a professor. He looked at 14 years worth of votes, over 1 billion votes that were cast, found 31 examples of voter fraud, potentially. We had one last year, one that was actionable. And it was somebody who voted by mail and then decided he's gonna fake the system and he's gonna vote in person. He got caught. The Attorney General handled that one.
Justin Levitt.
Justin Levitt, thanks. So let's keep in mind that the right to vote is the very foundation of our democracy. What we're seeing in states like Georgia, Texas, Florida, Arizona is really unacceptable. The right to vote is enshrined in our Constitution. Have they produced any evidence of widespread voter fraud? No. Is there any proof of election rigging anywhere in the country? No. Do these politicians want to be able to choose their voters rather than the other way around? Yes. Instead of embracing and celebrating the record-breaking turnout of 2020, they've created a bogus ailment that they could sell their snake oil on for strict voter ID, vote by mail restrictions, removing drop boxes. Let me give you an example. One drop box is allowed in San Antonio. where Representative Castro is from. There's a couple of million people there. One drop box is allowed. We had 175 drop boxes in Vermont last year. That averages out to about 3,500 voters per drop box. They had one for 2 million people. That's what we're up against. They also are reducing or eliminating voting by mail or early voting. Vermont went the other way back in 2009. We were 30 days voting, we went to 45. The true voter fraud in this country, please understand this, the true voter fraud in this country is not allowing someone to be able to cast a ballot that is otherwise eligible. That's the truth. I'm going to end right there, and I'm going to, because I know I probably took more than I should have. You're Scott.
One more round of applause for Jim. Thank you, Jim. Our next speaker has been central to advancing universal vote by mail, as well as a very long list of Democratic policy priorities. It's just too long for me to read right here. We are so lucky to have a leader as bold, inclusive, and thoughtful as Jill. Jill Krowinski is the Speaker of the House, and I'd love to welcome her to the stage.
Oh my gosh, it is so amazing to be here with all of you tonight. I just want to take a moment. Scott, thank you so much for your leadership in Lamoille County. We are turning this I also need to take a moment just to thank our incredible staff at the Vermont Democratic Party. Asha Carroll, our new Executive Director, Claire Cummings. Olney's over there, raise your hand. Thank you. I have to give an incredible amount of gratitude and thankness to our House Campaign Director, Spencer Dole. I also just want to take a moment. We do have a legend in the room. We're celebrating our amazing work on voter access, and we have our former Secretary of State, Don Hooper, here. He's a former House member as well, so he's in our special class. So nice to see all of you. I was thinking on Saturday, you know, as it was the 1-year anniversary of the passing of legendary John Lewis, which really had me thinking about all the work we accomplished this legislative session. And people often quote his amazing, fabulous quote about getting into good trouble, right? We always hear it. I love it. But I also love another quote of his, which is, "The vote is precious. The vote is sacred, and is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy." As Democrats, we believe that every American should have safe and easy access to participate in our democracy. We are the party that has fought for decades and decades to protect and expand the right to vote. Over the past year, even before the election took place, the Trump administration and Republicans all over the country were doing everything they could to limit access to voting. And Jim talked a lot about this. Even during the global pandemic, in a pandemic, they were raising the stakes and making sure that people weren't able to vote or not be safe when doing it. States were limiting absentee ballots, limiting mail-in voting, cutting poll places altogether, and fear-mongering and spreading lies about ballot harvesting. In states that did allow mail-in voting, the Trump administration and the Postmaster General deliberately tried to slow down ballots in the U.S., hoping that those ballots would get stuck in the mail before Election Day and not get counted. That is not democracy, and that is putting us backwards. But here in Vermont, and again, I need just to thank All of the House and Senate members who fought so hard to get these bills passed, please raise your hand if you serve in the House or in the Senate, just so everyone. We knew we had to do everything in our power to make sure that people were safe while still making sure that every eligible voter could vote. And almost immediately after the pandemic started, Secretary Condos, in true form, quick meeting to talk about this, and the legislature, we started working together on a bill to allow Vermonters to vote by mail while still leaving polling places open and safe. The bill was built on our strong foundation of early voting, which we have been working on for years, and again, so proud to have a former chair here, Linda Martin. We gave flexibility to vote however they saw safe and appropriate. And in the August primary, we mailed everyone a postcard to use a ballot, to request a ballot, and then in the general, we automatically mailed every registered voter a ballot. And we also invested money to make sure poll workers and voters were protected from COVID-19 at the polls. Now, all of this sounds pretty common sense, right? In an effort to ensure that people could safely vote in our elections. But this was a long and challenging debate in our own virtual state house. And before passage, Vermont Republicans took their party's national talking points and complained about ballot harvesting, voter fraud, the integrity of our elections. And it was painful and infuriating, but we held strong and we persevered on the floor. And needless to say, well, it was extremely frustrating because we know there's very little to no evidence of voter fraud, and there's no reason we should be putting up barriers to vote. It's exciting to be able to say to you today that our efforts worked. We did it. We did it. More than 370,000 people voted, which is close to 75% voter participation, both which are state records, which is amazing and so something to be proud of. And again, as you know, there was not a single credible complaint of ballot harvesting or voter fraud, and this is an incredible amount of voter participation, which is amazing. And on top of all of this, we kept people safe, and we did not see a spike in COVID cases due to the election. Our vote by mail bill worked exactly how we wanted. That is why when we returned to the legislature this year, we fought to make universal vote by mail permanent. So while state legislatures across the country are curtailing voter access with very restrictive voting laws, here in Vermont, we made it easy and friendly for registered voters to vote. So we passed S-19, which requires the Secretary of State to mail every voter a ballot 45 days before the election, and does not require municipalities to mail voters for local election race. It gives every town the option to have an outdoor polling place, drive-in or drive-through voting, and ballot drop boxes. It also institutes a ballot purling process where town clerks now need to notify a voter if their ballot has been defective, which a lot of us who were working on the campaign trail heard about the challenges with signing and with the envelope. So we're making sure that that is not a barrier for people to have their vote counted. In the House, we know all too well that every single vote counts. In 2010, we had a Democratic member in Orange County, our dear Sarah Buxton, who won by 1 vote over her Republican opponent. And then 6 years later, she lost by only 2 votes. And I believe Sam might be here, Sam Young, who won his first election by, I believe, 3 votes, right?
3, but then in the recount, it was only 1.
So every vote counts, every vote matters. I am so proud that we can be a model for other states in how to expand access and voting rights. And again, we can't do this work without strong majorities in the House and the Senate. So that's why we are working hard. We've already started to make sure that we have candidates in every district so that we can have strong majorities so that we can continue to pass these really incredibly important, critical bills. So we're making history together, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jill. Next up is Becca Balint. And when I thought about how to introduce Becca, her fellow senators really didn't have any trouble describing her. They say that Becca is pragmatic, brilliant, and full of love for her colleagues. She's breaking glass ceilings left and right as the first woman and the first gay person to hold the office of Senate Pro Tem. I'm so pleased to introduce Becca Balint.
Start by saying, I hope everyone just watched the room when you came in, because there was so much glee at seeing each other and being close to each other. And it's a lovely thing to see as people are, well, can I hug? Can I? Everyone's like, I of course I can hug. Except for Adam McCracken, he's like, don't touch me. Yeah. What I want to say is, working with Jim, working with Jill on this issue, it will be some of the best work that I do in my life. I know. Jim is such a leader on this issue. And this is a really, really big deal. And often in Vermont, we have this story about ourselves, which is that the nation's watching us. And mine was from Wyoming, and when we go to Wyoming, they say things like, I forgot that was a state. And I actually, when I taught out there, I had someone say to me, oh, you're from Vermont. What state is that in? And so oftentimes, we have this story, this very self-important story about ourselves. But in this instance, it is absolutely true. What we did was amazing. And so I know that we've already acknowledged a lot of the electeds in the room, but I just want to say, if you are an elected official or have been an elected official, please raise both hands so people can see you. It is not an easy job. It's really not an easy job. And as Jim spoke to, it's getting harder and harder because of the threats, because of the anger, because of the distrust. So I do want to thank my colleagues for that. And I want to thank Sarah Copeland-Hansis, and I wish my chair were here, Senator White. The two of them, very methodically, eyes on the prize, focused, we're getting it done. So thank you, Sarah. One of the things both Jill and Jim alluded to, but I want to make it explicit, we are actually showing the nation what good governance looks like. What does it look like when a government functions? What does it look like when you have leaders who are protecting the sacred rights of citizens? Well, just look to what we are doing here. That is what we are doing here. And it takes leadership, and it takes vision, and it takes focus, and it takes guts. When you open your email and people are accusing you of all kinds of malfeasance, it really takes courage. So make sure when we are heading into this next election season a year from now, make sure you thank your local reps for putting themselves out there. So we started the session with an insurrection at the Capitol, and Jill and I spoke together to an interview the other day, and what that felt like to be taking the helm in our chambers during a global pandemic, trying to do it over Zoom, and then to have our own security in the State House pop their head in our offices and say, there's an insurrection at the Capitol. And as Jill and I said, at first we weren't sure, did they mean our Capitol? Did they mean our State House? And those were very scary hours and very scary days, and they continue to be frightening for all of us. Thinking about things I never had to think about before, when the chief of police came to me and said, you know what, Becca, I don't think you should park your car out in front anymore. I do have a bright yellow car that says Senate on it, so it's a problem. It's a problem. My wife still hasn't forgiven me, but park behind, I'm not feeling safe. Those little things make a difference. You start seeing your job differently. So what I want to do, because I think Jim and Jill have done a really great job talking about the bill itself, the work that we've done, the work that we continue to do. What I want you to do is actually make this a lot more personal. I want everybody to take a moment, and if you're comfortable, I want you to just close your eyes, and I want you to think about some of the memories that you have of voting, because it's a really personal thing. And they can be positive, they can be negative, but I want you to remember that, because I know you're all nerds and geeks. That's why you're here tonight. You're not doing anything. You're here tonight talking about voting. So let's lean in, okay, and think about that. So what I think about is I was a civics teacher for years, and some of the most important work that I did was teaching kids at a young age the importance of voting. And then as a child of an immigrant, and I know many of you know my family story, but my dad's family members were killed in the Holocaust. And so for me, fascism is not a concept. It's not an idea, it's not a theory, it's something that happened to my family. So at a very early age, my dad would bring us into the voting booth. He said, this is how you protect yourself. This is how you protect your community. And I was thinking about what it felt like for me the first time I took my kids to vote, and how excited they were to come out and get that sticker that said I voted, or I stood up for democracy, or all those stickers that we get from our town clerks that Jim talked about. And so voting means so much to all of us. We hold it so dearly. And it's not here. What we're talking about is like it takes policy to get it through, but it's not here. It's here, and it's here. And I was thinking earlier today about a time when I went to vote when I was really conflicted. And like a lot of the people in this room, I'm sure most of us vote straight ticket Democrat. Sometimes we vote little PED, sometimes we vote progressive, but mostly we're voting Democratic. And I remember one time, it was the 1996 presidential election, and I went in to cast my vote, and I looked at the ballot, and Bill Clinton was on the ballot for re-election. And I could not vote for him because he had passed DOLE, Defense of Marriage Act. I couldn't do it. And I will never forget being in that voting booth and hearing the voices that people say when you vote third party. You're voting against your own interests. Why are you doing that? You're not taking the long view. There are so many other issues. And the reason why I bring it up tonight is because voting is here and here, and we're at a crisis right now in this nation. We're having an existential crisis about democracy. And one of the things that we can understand a little bit better about the people who are in our opposing party, and I'm not talking about people at the top who are driving this crazy train. I'm talking about the people in our communities, people in our families who have bought the big lie. And I dare say most of us have family members, extended family members who have bought the big lie, so it's personal, right? So for me, remembering that today, I did not vote for Bill Clinton. Boo on me or boo on Clinton, I'm not sure. Either's fine, I understand. But I remember the feeling, and that's what I want you to get in touch with. I remember the feeling. Her name was Monica Moorhead, and she ran third party. Now, somebody else ran third party that year. Ross Perot, remember him? Okay? Thankfully, Bill Clinton won re-election because I have that distance now. I have the distance to say I didn't make the right choice in that moment. Oh, I didn't. But it was about here, and it was about here, and I'm speaking to my friend here, Keith, it's about when you don't feel seen by your leaders. That's what it's about, when you don't feel seen by your leaders. So what I want us to think about is that in our communities, in our organizations, there are people who thrive on conflict. And they don't have our best interests in mind. They don't have the best interests of their communities and their constituents. So I want us all to be better about calling those people out for what they are. It's about conflict, it's not about policy. I need us to be really focused on that. The other thing I want you to think about is that there are people within our state who don't feel that they are worthy of casting a vote. And I've seen it in my own life. Community members, sometimes it happens when I go out and try to collect signatures to get on the ballot, and they say, I don't do that kind of thing. And I say, you don't sign petitions? And they say, no, I don't vote. I don't do that kind of thing. And I think there's part of me as an old civics teacher that was very shaming about it. What do you mean you don't vote? What are you talking about you don't vote? What kind of a citizen are you? Who let you in here? You know? But really, when you take a step back and say, well, what is it that leads people to that place where they don't feel like they have the right to vote? So I want us all to get really curious about the people in our communities. So a couple years ago, I had a dear friend. We were in a band together, actually, and it was after rehearsal one night, and I was shocked to learn that he and his wife didn't vote. And I said to him, tell me a little bit more about that. And he said, well, I just don't see how it affects my life. I don't see how it affects my life. It doesn't matter. And I realized that they got support through WIC, the program Women for Infants and Children, Women and Infants and Children program. They got food delivered every week. They got eggs, and they got milk, and they got cheese, and they got diapers sometimes. And I said, well, you know, we wouldn't have WIC if you didn't send people to represent you who believed in those kind of programs. And it was such an aha moment for both of them. And that's what I need us to do. I need all of us to make it matter again. That's what this is about. It's about trying to make it matter again. So, Lyndon Johnson said something that is also a powerful thing for us to think about. He said, people vote because it gives people as individuals control over their destinies. And that's what we need to convey to our constituents. We're giving you control over your destinies. Because what we see that happened at the Capitol, and what we see in those angry emails and phone calls, is people who feel powerless. They're enraged because they feel powerless. Convincing them that there is a way to channel that feeling towards positive action is the way we're going to get through this. Absolutely. So, and I know I'm not the only one who believes this. So many organizations, this was their top priority heading into this session. I can't rattle them all off. We had a broad spectrum of support. People said nothing else can happen without this. And so I want to thank all of those organizations who had a hand in lifting us up, keeping us focused, keeping us steady, not listening to the naysayers in the room. And so we will, together, as we come together as Democrats supporting candidates who actually believe in democracy and believe we can make a difference in people's lives and show up in our communities, we're going to make voting matter again through the work that we do.
Thank you so much, Becca. That was so inspiring. I never expected to hear functioning governance as an applause line. It's a good line. Our next speaker is someone that I hold truly very close to my heart. Bruce Olson became VDP's statewide chair last year after a stint as the chair of Lamoille County Dems. And when that happened, when he moved on to the major leagues, you know, our county rejoiced because we no longer had to live under his tyranny. And Bruce, you know, your generosity of spirit has just more than made up for all the messes that you left behind. But in all seriousness, it's truly an honor for me to introduce someone that taught me so much about Vermont, about Lamoille County, and about democratic politics. So thank you so much, Bruce. Please come on.
Thank you, Scott, I think. I'm going to be brief. I come out of the labor movement, and the bar closes at 8, and there's a phrase in my union that says, you never stand between the membership and the bar, so I will be as quick as I can. But I do want to make one point that I don't think any of the speakers have actually said tonight, and that is, if we think about the one organization in Vermont, across the country, or in the U.S. Congress that is actually fighting tooth and nail to defend and expand voting rights, that organization is the Democratic Party. Yep. So, you should all be proud of this victory because you all had a part in it, and you all have a part in making sure that, as Becca says, we defeat fascism in the United States and we have a true democracy. And, you know, we know what that can look like, and we know how close we were on January 6th to really turning that corner and going down a deep, deep, dark hole. And you stopped it. Your work has been great. So tonight, you know, we're honoring the heroes who did that. Jim Condos, Becca and Jill, Sarah, Allison, who's on the Government Affairs Committee in the Senate. I know how hard all of you have worked to make this night possible. And we really owe a great deal of gratitude to each and every one of you. So thank you for that. Let's all give them a round of applause. I also want to thank all the sponsors that made this night possible. Your generous contributions. I can tell you, as you know, the chair of the party, you know, I keep an eye on what the finances are and how important it is to raise money. We tend to kind of lose track of that because we go about our daily lives and we think, well, the party will take care of that. Well, the party will. We have a great staff, but you know, it takes money to run the operations of the party, to keep it going. And your support tonight is so important. As sponsors and as ticket holders and contributors to this effort, we cannot thank you enough. So thank you. I want to say one other thing, is that in the House we have a campaign. We have Spencer Dole. Where is Spencer? Spencer does a great job. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we have such a strong majority in Jill, I hope you agree with me, is such a strong majority in the House is because of the work of Spencer Dole and, you know, helping to find candidates, support those candidates, and make sure they get the resources they need to win. Now, unfortunately, we do not have any such type of, we don't have a Spencer Dole in the Senate. And so I know that Becca and Allison really focused on making sure that we have someone like Spencer for next year, because we know there's going to be some retirements in the Senate, and there's going to be a change, and we have to be prepared for that change. And so, where is Scott Weathers? Oh, there he is. So Scott very generously has put up a significant sum of money that towards creating a Spencer DOLE for the Senate. And he's willing to match that. If we get contributions to that effort, he will match that dollar for dollar. Tonight, you thought you were done, but no.
Please help us hire another staffer. We love it.
Yes. So I just want you to dig deep again, and with our gracious thanks, and help us get a Spencer DOLE for the Senate table. We really appreciate that. The last thing I'd say, well, second to last thing, one is that if you're not a Dem Club member, this is donate every month. Please sign up to be one. That provides really a level of financial stability to the party in terms of funding our daily operations, which is critical for our ongoing success. So if you have not, if you are a Dem Club member, thank you. If you are not, please take this opportunity to sign up. And I would just refer you to our Finance Director Extraordinaire, Kate Olney. Kate. If you are interested in making a contribution for the Senate campaign, see Kate. If you're interested in being a Dem Club member, see Kate. And life will be much better in that regard. So I think that's all I have. I would just say one thing. The bar is open till 8. It's so good to see everyone in person. Have a drink. You can even go outside, and if the weather is nice, we arranged it. I know this weather has been horrible all week, but we took care of tonight for you. So a final word I would just say is thank you. Thank you for your contributions.